speaker. I'd have to say this is the first time I've been to a Toastmasters meeting, so I'm learning from this myself. In fact, I'm rather frightened because I hear I'm going to be evaluated on how I speak and my grammar, and whether I'm using the English language correctly. And then it's like the question, well, what am I supposed to speak about? And I was told by my colleagues at the embassy, I said, well, what do they want to hear me to talk about? They said, whatever you do, don't speak about 25 years of American-Kazakh relations, don't avoid politics, avoid religion, and don't speak about the expo, Because I was both not only the ambassador here, but I was commissioner of the American pavilion here. And I don't know how many of you actually visited the American pavilion, but you probably heard me there speaking, in languages, Salamas, whatever. But actually, I was thinking about what would be. Excuse me, I also have a cold, and this is the beautiful Astana weather, and I just also finished speaking. I had a meeting at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs today. It started at 5 p.m. and it ended just a little after 7. So, if I'm a little hoarse, it's because one of the as you probably know, your president is going to be visiting the United States soon as a guest of President Trump. So there's a lot of preparation that we have to do because it's only a few weeks away, and there's an awful lot of work that has to be done in preparing a visit of a president to any country. Fortunately, it's your president going to the United States. If my president were coming here, I would probably be not here. I would be, on my way to the hospital, frightened and whatever as well. But it's interesting to know that what you're here to do is to increase your skills in public speaking, and also how you exert leadership when you are speaking to an audience. And I'd have to say that as an ambassador, this is very much part of the work and the art of diplomacy, and a lot of what we do as diplomats, in particular as an ambassador. As the Toastmaster had mentioned, that a lot of our work is public diplomacy. It's speaking in public. It's speaking to people and on various topics. It's recording videos, which is now become a very important part of diplomacy, such as taping greetings on national days, on doing things that would make people, and saying things that would make people, for instance, here in Kazakhstan, feel good about the United States, and for us to also, as Americans, to show our respect for the people and the culture of Kazakhstan. Because that's very much what we're here to do as diplomats, is to increase the mutual understanding, the mutual respect between our peoples, culturally and the way we speak to each other. Now, one of the the challenges as a diplomat is, for me, okay, I'm an American diplomat. English is my native language, but often when you're serving abroad in various countries, it's good to be able to learn to speak in the native language. And that is particularly difficult because one can learn how to give a speech and to speak publicly in English. You feel confident. It's your native tongue. But if I'm facing an audience in which I have to give a speech off the cuff, as it were, in, say, Russian or Belarusian, first I have to know the language. And that takes a lot of practice, because it's far easier in some respects to read the language than to be able to speak publicly in it and to think at the same time, because oftentimes you're thinking, for instance, in English and then translating in your mind into Russian. Now, I guess many of you are probably native Kazakh speakers or Russian speakers, and so when you're processing your thoughts, I often wonder, are you thinking in Kazakh and Russian, and then translating it in your mind so that you would know what you want to say in English, because presumably you'll be speaking tonight, those of you, in English. And so having that confidence in the language in your speaking, but also knowing the cultural aspects of the language. I mean, it would be very interesting if you would, how does someone speak well and give a speech in English, and the type of emphasis that you put on your words, on your sentences, and the structure of it, compared that if you were speaking in Russian, for instance, and if you're trained, for instance, as a Russian diplomat, to how do you give a speech in Russian? And I've learned through the years, I've been 35 years in the diplomatic service of the United States and served in many countries, and I could say that I probably speak none of the languages very well, including English anymore. But it is interesting. It's actually the great challenge, I find, and the fun part of it too, is how can you communicate effectively in your native language, but particularly if you're using a foreign language. And what kind of tricks can you learn over time that would make you sound effective, even though your vocabulary, your understanding of all the nuances of the language are not as it would be as if you were a native speaker. And some of the things I've learned through the years is one cardinal rule, and that is make it simple. Make it simple. Use simple phrases. Use language that's vivid. And you can actually make a very good speech with a very limited vocabulary if you combine it with making simple statements. Sometimes, as you know, in the Russian language, it can be very complicated. Sometimes you can find yourself as you think, I know, gerunds, things like that. And then you find yourself, you're digging yourself deeper and deeper into this hole of how are you going to end this sentence that you started out thinking you really knew all the grammatical aspects of the Russian language. But similarly in English, if you try to be too fancy, you can end up losing yourself and losing your audience at the same time. So that, what I would say, is a cardinal rule of public speaking, at least that I've found, is to make it simple and build on the language that you already have through the uses of a lot of phrases. I remember when I was studying Russian, it said, what are all the phrases in Russian you would need to use so that you wouldn't say, whoa, whatever. Because, that in any language, if you're, in fact, in Uzbek, that noise or that sound means something very obscene in the Uzbek language. So they said, whatever you do, if you're speaking in Uzbek, do not say, or whatever, because that has connotations that. So that's the other thing, is to learn the cultural things that you may think you're getting your message across. And even by the way you use your hands or what you say, but also the words, they can actually mean quite the opposite to people who are listening to you than what you really mean to be saying. And that's another thing, is how you use your whole body in what you want to say. Now, many of you, probably have seen politicians and how they speak. And they're actually trained, just like oftentimes diplomats. Now, to be an ambassador, you have to go, they have a special course, a 3-day course where they have a professional a person who teaches people how to speak in public. Also, what to wear. Because if you're on television, I would have to say, this is not something you should wear. Stripes. You have to know the technical aspects is to wear something that is solid colors, nothing that is particularly intricate, because the way things look on television and on videos that you would have, it's to have like like a lot of what I wore one time to this class was like a dark blue shirt with a red and blue tie and a blue blazer, you know, dark pants and everything. It really sets off you so it doesn't distract from the person that's listening to you, that they're looking at this sort of funny thing that's on your tie, because sometimes it makes all kinds of effects. So how you dress is very important also when you're giving a public speech, because you don't want your dress to detract from your speech. And if you look at, for instance, your president and my president, when they give public speeches, they generally have like dark suits and a dark tie, either red or blue. You rarely see, and you don't really see stripes, and you don't see patterns. You generally see a rather solid one with maybe a slight pattern that doesn't. So I can assure you that when your president and my president are making a speech or going off or a press conference, they have someone on their staff that will look at them and say, this is what you should wear for this particular event. So how you look is also as important as to what you say. And also your hands. You know, some people, if you're just standing there straight and your face is, you know, you're frozen, it's how you have these natural movements in your performance, as it were. And a lot of it is acting. And so if you could learn and study acting and how actors have to learn to declaim, where you put the emphasis on your words, whatever language it is, it's very important to try even to practice. Go in front of a mirror. Sometimes I do this if I have a very important engagement. Go in front of a mirror, try different things. Now, for a woman, I think, you know, it's a bit different because men, you can wear a dark suit, a dark tie, or whatever. What are the types of, you know, dresses, the type of things that you would wear? What kind of jewelry would you want? Earrings and that. So you don't want to distract your crowd, but you want to attract the attention of the crowd and your audience to your face and to what you're saying, and not that they're looking at you and not listening to you. So it's often good to practice in advance, and it's being natural too. And a lot of natural behavior is just to be confident in yourself. How to recover from where you may be groping for a word because you just can't have it, and so you can smile and say, well, I think you know what I mean. And again, these are various filler words and things like that as you're trying to get your thoughts together. And also, if you have just a construction in your mind of the type of talk you want to give. Now, I came here thinking I would have an entirely different topic that I was going to speak about, change in America and things like that. But when I heard that what you're really interested in is public speaking and some of the and how to speak effectively, I thought, well, maybe I would have a few things I could share with you, having been an ambassador and a public speaker for much of the last 35 years. So again, what I would say is make it simple, use direct language, also how you look, and practice before you speak, if at all possible. Anyways, that's what I would say to you. And thank you very much for this opportunity.